Hi. Good evening. I'm Barbara, and this is
Amy Adams.
And so we're here to just share some thoughts with you and help you to brainstorm and make the best environment for your children using the Montessori philosophy and lots of good stuff to help us to be the best parents we can be.
And if you don't know me, I am a co-teacher in Pentagon Studio. So I was a parent for about 4 years.
And still are.
Oh yeah, still. But I started as a parent, and so then I became a teacher 3 years ago.
A real gin.
Oh yes. And my kids are now 7 and 10. So hopefully I have some good advice. But just to kind of warn you guys, I hear a lot from parents saying like, oh, I know this isn't Montessori, or, you know, I did this, I know it's not Montessori, or I'm not the best. And we're not judging you. Mm-hmm. Like, right, when it's 10 o'clock at night, which this doesn't work for you guys since your kids are in bed at 7, or, you know, your kid is melting down because of whatever reason, and you are tired and cranky, we're not judging anyone. We know parents get short too, and, you know, it's totally fine. Just know that hopefully you might have all of these tools in your toolbox, and this might just be a refresher, or maybe there's a couple things that you can pick up that might help you at home, and maybe you can incorporate those into your family life, and then focus on those for a while, and then incorporate more. So just know that we are with you every step of the way.
Mm-hmm. And my children are 23 and 26. And so now I have grandchildren that are 18 months old, so I have made lots of mistakes that you get to learn from tonight, too.
Oh, and I know we have a couple early ed parents. Are you, anybody 6 to 9?
9 to 12.
Okay.
12 to 14. 14 to 18. See? Oh, yeah,
whatever. He is everything.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Oops. Sorry, that was my fault. Okay. This is just a few things that we're going to touch on today. Appropriate independence, the prepared environment. Do you want to read that one?
Anybody want to read that one? Oh, we're supposed to be changing this, aren't we? Darn it. Hello. We must therefore quit our roles as jailers and instead take care to prepare an environment in which we do as little as possible to exhaust the child with our surveillance and instruction. So think about that just a second, right? You know, before we started the school, I thought a lot about, I went to a lot of daycares and schools, and, you know, there isn't much difference sometimes between a school and a jail. And so, you know, when we started this school, we did not want it to be like a jail. We wanted to make sure that children had the freedom that they were able to have, right? And we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. And then, you know, our role is to watch, observe, be scientists, and adjust that prepared environment as necessary.
The freedom within limits is also something we're going to talk about, as well as the role of the parent. So that kind of just gave you an idea. Oh, I said I would do this, but apparently I'm not that great at it.
The down arrow works good too.
Okay, I'll do that from now on. So one of the most important things that you want for your child is for them to be self-sufficient, right? Especially as they grow. You don't want your 16-year-old not being able to take care of themselves. So one of the things that Maria Montessori said that we repeat a lot in the 3 to 6 level at least is any unnecessary help is an obstacle to development. Do not do for your child what they can do for themselves. You can, just like we do in the classroom, right? We might give a lesson, we might show them, model for them how to put on their coat or to get themselves out of their sweatshirt, and then they can do it on their own. And they might cry, they might say that they need you. And one thing that we sometimes say is, it's hard, but you can do hard things. Sometimes our support just looks like sitting next to them while they do it. So if I know that a child can put on their shoes, I've seen them do it before, you know, and they're upset, I can support you. I'll sit right here with you while you do it. And sometimes that's all they need, right? That's all they need is just for you to be there, but they can do it on their own. And even a 3-year-old can put on their own clothing. Let's see, and mistakes are part of the learning process too.
Can I just add to
yeah,
that? So this works the same with algebra too. You know, so with that elementary child or that secondary age level, you know, we could still say, I'll sit here with you, or show me what you did on this example. How did you do this problem if you don't know this one? Which step is it that's confusing? And so sometimes just being there and helping them to have that aha moment, and when we stop and allow that to happen naturally, it's beautiful.
So one of the things that Maria Montessori said was, we must help the child to act for himself, will for himself, think for himself. This is the art of those who aspire to serve the spirit. So you're setting your child up for functional independence, which is just daily living, right? By giving them the tools that they need, and making those tools accessible to them, right? So even your 10-year-old and 11-year-old can wash their own clothes. They might need a Post-it note on the washing machine that tells them what settings are the most useful to them, but they can do that. And I put a couple pictures in here just to kind of give examples, but obviously for the older kids, this would change, right? The picture on the left is just the cleaning tools that my kiddos have had since they were 2 and 3. It's put down, it's actually, what you can't tell is it's underneath the light switch. So she can easily reach it. She can sweep up her own spills. The picture on the right is actually from her playroom. She took that photo for me. It has the cubbies, and on the cubbies are pictures with what's in the cubbies. So it might be her play silks or her mask or her stuffed animals. So it's just making that accessible, making cleanup easy, right? So that they have the tools, they have the know-how to put things away. In the kitchen, and stop me if you need. In the kitchen, so especially like for the little ones, if they're dishes, you might have the pull-out drawers that you can put some dishes in. I had a microwave cart, and so it was at their level, so that the underneath of the microwave, where the microwave should have gone, was just their dishes, right? Cups, plates that they could get themselves. There was a basket full of ready-made snacks, so whatever your kids might eat. I think here they have some Cheerios and like bags of pretzels maybe, so whatever they would need. And you can do this in the fridge too, right? There could be a pitcher of water in the fridge, you know, that they can easily, like my 7-year-old still can't reach the sink, and so she might take a stool over there, but she also might just fill it from the pitcher in the fridge, and that's fine too. I was telling Barbara when we were prepping for this, I said, my first year teaching, I of course picked up every germ that the kids brought. I was like a new kindergartner, and so I had got so sick with strep or something, and I had gone home from work, and it was the next day I took off and went to the doctor, but I went home from work and I just dozed on the couch the whole evening. And, you know, I was just so sick. And I woke up when Matt got home from work at 10 o'clock. The kids had made themselves dinner, had put themselves to bed. Vivi, here I am on the couch. Vivi had made herself a bed, right? She was kindergarten. Okay. She was kindergarten. Yeah, so she had made herself a little bed right beside the couch. And so, you know, they can do it, right? Like they made themselves peanut butter ham sandwiches, whatever they might have made. But it was nice that they knew how to do it already. Let's see. Oh, and this is just the picture on the left is when we had made up her room when she was 2 and Lucy was 2, who's now 10. We had made an art center, a writing center for her. And so we talked about how you only write on paper. And actually throughout the years, that's only been an issue once or twice. And then she takes it off with magic eraser. But it's evolved over the years because obviously they're a little too big for this now. So on the left is an art, or on the right is an art cart that just stays by the kitchen table. They have a little on the bottom shelf. There's a little plastic tablecloth if they want to paint or what have you. And so you would do whatever works for your family, right? But it just shows the evolution of things. So you might have whatever you know, your kids do most.
Can I pause you just a second?
Absolutely.
So some of you might be thinking right now, okay, I thought I was going to learn how to parent the difficult stuff. Anybody thinking that right this minute? No one wants to admit that, maybe.
We'll get there.
So this is part of it, right? So, when you have a way for children to, what I believe is the number one most difficult part of parenting? Technology. That causes more of the disturbances in the family than it does the support. And so when I support families and they say there's always conflict, I'm like, well, tell me what happens right before and right before that. Oh, they were playing on the Game Boy, or they were whatever the tool is that they have. And so when you prepare the environment with different things, when you have art out, when you have, even for teenagers, fresh fruits and vegetables chopped up that they can go to and that they can eat, because oftentimes for teenagers, it's because they're hungry and or they're dehydrated, and so they're not doing those basic need pieces, and they're just right in front of their screen, and they're not taking a break, and then they're really, really aggravated and frustrated by 8 or 9 o'clock that night, and then they can't go to sleep. And so the prepared environment isn't just the cutesy Montessori stuff. It really is the reason and the way that children settle and teens settle. And so when you think about, and so part of that prepared environment, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but is how do you prepare, how do you use technology as a family, how do you use screens? And so as you're going through this, think about your age of your child and what other things that you would do to help to be accessible and or not accessible during that time that you all are home together or they're home by themselves.
This just shows a closet, because we talk a lot about freedom within limits. So you might give your child, they can choose their own clothing, right? You're just going to put the clothing that's out of season away so that your child's not wearing spaghetti straps on today. But they would, and this is a closet in transition. Don't judge me by this closet, you guys.
Looks great.
But it's, and this was just like, I remember one day I was like, I need the clothes put down at Lucy's level, and I made Matt go to Lowe's, and I was like, I don't care, like get a $40 closet organizer. I just need more things. And so he did, and it was just simply adding some bars down low so that she could pick her own clothes, and that's what she wanted. Like, we had lots of meltdowns, and she just wanted to pick her own clothes that were not pink, not sparkly,
Can I start something?
Yeah.
So what age level? She said 3-year-old can dress themselves. Is that the youngest? Sarah, what's the youngest? Renee, what's the youngest? A year? Year and a half?
Like a year.
Between a year and 2 years old, depending on the child, right?
Yeah, like at 18 months probably.
But doesn't that take a really long time? Yes, it does. Just be honest. But you'll notice a sense of, I've seen it when you're up there, there's a sense of calmness when they did it themselves, right? And so sometimes we get into that efficiency model, and even with teenagers, just put on the jeans that are clean, and they really just want to know that they can do it themselves, and that there is a sense of calm that comes from that process too.
Plan ahead.
Yes.
Plan ahead big time.
Plan ahead.
Absolutely, right? And pick your battles, right? I mean, this is not the mountain I want to die on, right? It is not,
Rather than get frustrated in that whole thing. Because that means like you succeed after that frustration. Believe in it.
Repeat that.
So I'm always a little bit at them.
Yeah. Let them get frustrated. Yes. And this is just a couple more pictures of children being able to do stuff, but like you said, might not be perfect, might not be in a timely manner, but they're doing it.
Isn't that unsafe, Amy?
It's a drill, and it's a hand drill, and she can do it.
You showed her how to do it.
And she did it.
She could do it.
She loved it.
I bet.
Oh, and even she wanted to get the mail, so she just took a stool outside to get the mail every day. And even in the backyard, right? You don't have to be out there with them. You can show them the boundaries, just like we do out here in the woods, for our early ed kids, and even the older kids go to the field, they go to the woods. We show them the boundaries of where they can go, and they stay in it. I think
And you go inside. No. You stay out there with them.
yeah, but I think once children know where and what they can do, they have that freedom, right? They know, and they can make anything, right? Like I just had these tires because I was trying to grow some potatoes. Yeah, I don't know. It was a bad idea that never got like done, but she had totally taken over those tires because she was going to make whatever she wanted. And I was like, do what you will. And she was happy. And like less meltdowns, right? Because she's doing what she wants. Like if I had gone out there and said, let me show you what I think you should do. Let me, she would not have been as happy. And so as far as collaborative environments, in early daddy especially, and I even do this with my 10-year-old, do lots of positive phrasing, right? You may, you can. If they question it, just repeat it. You may put your dish in the sink. And I think that we because we limit our use of no so that it doesn't get overused. And I think people kind of freak out a little and they're like, what? You just let the kid do whatever they want? And it's not like that at all. It's just if we have to say the word no, we want it to really count and we want them to pay attention to it because it's usually an unsafe thing that we need their attention quickly. So we might say something else. If your kiddo wants a cookie, right, you might just say, you may have one after dinner or maybe tomorrow, right? And we also use brief, matter-of-fact statements about what is acceptable, right? Doors are not toys. Someone might get hurt. And I'm trying to think of more brief, matter-of-fact statements. But there are things that are non-negotiables, right? Like the car seat, brushing their teeth, you might just say, you may buckle yourself in, or I might buckle you, or I will buckle you in, Go ahead and make that decision. Do you want me, or do you want to do it? And we've talked about freedom within limits. And we also, especially even going up, my 10-year-old too, I have to make sure that I'm ready to follow through with whatever I say. And it has made me hesitate because if I say something, by golly, I have to follow through. So I'm like, do I want to do this? Do I? But yeah, it's, you have to follow through with it. If I say it's time to go, then it's time to go. And we leave. I don't, sit and chat with my mama friends for a while. It's time to go. Do you want to talk about that too?
I was just going to say, I had this whole set of books I was going to bring. They're still in my space, so I'll put them on the video if you want to look at them later. But Barbara Coloroso, who I think's got some really great books, one of them is Kids Are Worth It. And she said, I think this was a story about her, that she was taking her children to Disney World. And so they were off and they were fighting. And she's like, if you all don't stop fighting right now, I'm turning this car around. What happened? They went on fighting and she turned the car around. And I think she got up the road and she was like, this is ridiculous, like I made a mistake, and so she eventually, I think, if I remember the story correctly, she apologized, like I probably went too far, I understand that you're really upset and, I want to be able to do this better, So, there is that piece that I think we forget as parents that we have time. We feel like we have a sense of urgency. We have to say it right then, and then it's really hard to take back. And so, like you said, you pause. And so that's something that I've learned a lot through the time is just pause. Just pause. Make sure that you're not making a rash comment.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to I might have said something to my child, and then I have to go, oh, I worded that as a question. It's, because if you word it as a question and they say no, you can't blame them, right? I don't want to pick up my toys either, right? I would say no. So if I said, do you want to go ahead and pick this up? Well, no, they don't. So you have to make sure that you're not wording it as a choice if it's not a choice for you. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so, part of that is creating the rules together. So, if we say, I remember after an in-service that we had that we went home and practiced these things with our children. At the time, Sarah was a child too in our extended family. And we would say, the clock says 10 o'clock, trying to help them. That was what we said, that at 10 o'clock we would turn off the electronics or whatever it was. And they're like, what are you doing? Why are you acting like that? But, you know, and then we finally had to say, well, we're trying to be more consistent with what we said, you know, and it took a minute to get over that. But sometimes we try something new and it's awkward. And so, you know, when we create these plans together, and I always say to families, don't say you're going to do anything if you're not sure you can do it. Like if you said no electronics after 10 and you're finding every day you're saying, well, I need an exception. I've got to get this done, you know, or I have to call so-and-so, or you know, then you're not saying what you mean. And so we only try to say what we can actually do. And so when you collaborate, I'm a big fan. Barbara Coloroso talks a lot about this, about family meetings. And so having a family meeting and discuss, and it's not you dictating, it's really discussing. And so having that conversation with the child, and oftentimes the child will say, I don't like it when you remind me 7 times to brush my teeth. I'm like, okay, what can we do differently? I want you to tell me once. But what if you don't do it? I want you to tell me once. You know? And so I'm like, well, we have to have something that we could both agree on, because I feel like, you know, it's then 10:30 and it's whatever. And so, okay, if I don't do it by 10, then I go to bed at 9:30 the next day. Okay, you've got that plan. Sounds good to me, you know? And so then if you follow through with it and you don't get to that next day and they're like, oh, it was just 10:02, you know, well, we said 9:30. We wrote it down right here, you know? And the child's like, it was 2 minutes. We wrote down, you know? And so we said that if you did it tomorrow by 9:30, then we'll go back to 10 again. You can do it, you know? And so we stick with it. We don't wishy-wash. We don't go back and forth. We don't say, yeah, you know, that we don't have to do that tonight, or we're going to change the rules tonight, because that's really confusing and it's super frustrating. Validating their feelings. I know you have a lot on your plate right now. I do want to remind you, we discussed that you do the dogs, the cat litter box on Wednesday night, and it's 9:00, and so I'm just reminding you. And so validating what they're saying, you know, and then just like if you were with your spouse or partner, there's times where they can ask for support, you know. I got late on this. I know that was my responsibility. Is there any way you could do that tonight? I love that when my daughters would come up and say that to me, you know, and, you know, we just would have that moment of grace. And so oftentimes if I was on the ball, I would say the day before, you know, I did that last time, but that's not going to happen this time. So just want to make sure if there's anything that you need to do tonight, because it's tomorrow, you know, and trying to help them to be successful. A team approach. Let's see if we can create a plan together to help you to keep your room clean. When we tell a child go clean their room, you know, there's as many personality styles as there are children, and so we have to know what theirs are. You know, we have to say what are their strengths, what are their goal areas. If you've got a big picture child, they're going to work on, you know, rearranging all of their sock drawer, you know, and so they're going to spend 2 hours on that, and you wanted them to just pick up the stuff on the floor, and so you have to think about it. You have to be clear with that. So we talked about cleaning the room means that nothing should be on the carpet before you go to bed. And that doesn't mean you can shove it all under your bed, which I learned oftentimes what my children did, right? And so then we would have a time that we'd clean out the bed, you know, underneath the bed. So, you know, being clear and knowing where your child's strengths are and how they see the world also helps that to be consistent too. Tell stories, talk together, learn from one another. My favorite thing to do was to tell children about my childhood, or especially when I made mistakes or when I used words that were really inappropriate, and how my mom chose to handle that. And so, you know, those are things that are bonding, and children love to hear stories about that, and they love to hear that their mom or dad did something that was inappropriate, because sometimes they feel like we're perfect. True? You know, they start to see us as the ones that never make a mistake, and then it becomes really hard. And then when they become 9, 10, 11, and they learn how to tell a lie really good, they don't want to tell you, they don't want to disappoint you, because they feel like you're perfect. And so telling them often when you're not perfect, and reminding them that you can always tell me anything. You could always share that with me. That creates a lot less problems, especially as they move into adolescence, because you want them to be open with you, even at a fault. So this woman, Megan Northrup, she's an intervention specialist, and I've read this in some conference that I went to, and it just really resonated. And so one of parents' most important responsibilities is helping children to learn to govern themselves. According to experts, the best parenting combines firm expectations and reasonable freedom for children to make their own choices. When parents provide a good balance between rules and freedom, children learn to act responsibly on their own free will, even when parents aren't around. So one of Maria Montessori's beliefs was that, she knew she had reached a sense of success in the classroom when children could work as if she wasn't there, right? And so oftentimes, especially at this point of the year, Audra and her co-teacher Cody can walk out and children won't even know they're missing, right? And so they move along, and someone might need something or have a question, and they're like, where did everybody go? I can remember, most of us can remember our own childhood in school when the teacher left, that there would always be somebody that would try to do something or be funny, and because we lived in that kind of world, but we have to make sure we don't parent that way, or else the same thing would happen. When children feel like we're always there telling them what's right or wrong, they don't learn self-regulation. If we put up just the right amount of guardrail to help them from not going over the edge of the road, but also give them reminders along the way naturally, then that helps them to be better self-regulated. You want to go with this?
You can.
Go ahead, go for it.
One of the role of the parent, kind of like Barbara had said, you want to model, right? So apologize if you, if you're short with your child because you're tired, and you want to model that, right? So that they know that it's okay to apologize, and that you're not perfect, but you also want to build the trust with them, and that helps with the telling the stories and validating their feelings. That all kind of builds that trust and that rapport. And be present and conscious with your kiddos. I know
multitasking, right? Hard.
Yes, especially and it's hard. You can't, especially now that we're at the time, when our kids are looking at the screens. I can't look on my cell phone and have my child be talking to me and then expect them to give me that same courtesy that I want when, I'm talking to them and they're maybe playing a video game, right? I have to model what I want. I have to put my phone down. I have to be with them, be present, listen to their thorns and roses. That's what we do at my house. And they will call me on it if I get distracted. They do. And so that's why we kind of put really listening, because they will also question you, as you guys know, right? And we want to encourage the intrinsic motivation. We want them to do it and that's why, especially in 3 to 6, if we did a lot of good jobs, those kiddos are going to come and show us every single, if we say, oh, this is great, I love this, to somebody's drawing of a rainbow, we are going to get a ton of drawings of rainbows. So I might say, oh, do you like it? I can see that you used a lot of color. I keep it very matter of fact because I want them to do it because they want to do it. And so it's just helping instill that intrinsic motivation.
Let me share something with that if I can. Yeah. Barbara Coloroso also talked about, people will say, I remember a class that she didn't tell this part, I'll get back to her in a minute. I took this class at IUS during my undergraduate in my last semester, and it was a lot of praise and reward system. And I was doing my master's at that point because I already learned about Montessori, and I was like, I don't believe in praise. And this teacher was like, this is the most fun he probably had all year long. He's like, really? If I gave you $1 million, you wouldn't stand on this table and dance? And I said, well, sure I would, but if you didn't give me $1 million, I wouldn't stand on that table and dance. And he just got perplexed. But that's the point, right? And Barbara Coloroso talks about if we praise our children or give them rewards for things, where does it stop? What do we do then with that 16-year-old and that 17-year-old, and then they start only wanting to do if they're going to get something from it. My litmus test when I'm working with a family with a teen is that if the child says, well, what am I going to get for it if I do my homework, or if I do whatever this is? And I'm like, woo, out of balance, right? It's so easy to get out of balance. And so how do we help that process of helping them to feel like they want to do it because they want to be part of the family? I even encourage families to not have money that they give their children for chores. And instead, like when we all do our chores together, we all have more time, and then we can all go get some ice cream together. Instead of you get $2 if you do the dishes, you get $3 if you do this. And parents are like, yeah, but it works. They'll actually do it. I'm like, but would they do it as just being a member of the family? Like when do you help them to know that? What if you're low on money? What if you don't want them to do things only for money? And so I just think we really have to be cautious about those extrinsic pieces when they only do it for that purpose. And then we can still celebrate in other ways, but we don't have to do that by giving each person a certain amount of money or so forth. And then believe that everything that they say should be valued. Did you have something, Sarah?
I'm going to add to that real quick.
Yeah.
Because I think that when you start with those little things that help out the family really young, they're really interested in it. Like when Liam was 2, he was really interested in feeding Scarlett. And now that's his job because he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And then when
Scarlett's the dog.
Scarlett's the dog.
Just clearing, yeah.
My other child.
Yes.
Now I just and then when he was 3, he really liked taking out the recycling because it's the lighter one, and he can go out and do it with his dad. And now, like, he just takes out the recycling because that's his job and he's part of the family, So I feel like introducing those things early rather than
When they're really interested, right? Yeah.
rather than later when you have to be like, well, you have to do it because you're part of the family. And you're like, well,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have been part of this family. Why didn't
Right.
I do it then,
Right.
So, anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because sometimes we think the child's too young, and we'll wait until they get older, and then they're not interested anymore. And so then we're like, I missed the opportunity. Marie Montessori called the absorbent mind, and that time between 0 and 6, that's when we set those patterns up, and that's when they carry over.
Just to kind of comment on that, believe everything they say should be valued. I remember I was at a friend's house one time, and she has a 12-year-old son, and I think it was Minecraft he was talking about, but he went on for the longest time, and she just sat and listened. And then when he left, I was like, oh my gosh, what was that all about? And she said, I have no idea. I could tell you, but I don't really, but I was listening. She goes, but I read somewhere that you have to listen to the small things so that when it's big, they still come to you. And she's like, so I will listen and I can tell you about it, but I don't really, I am not playing Minecraft. So it's just one of those things that you want to, like you said, be present, make sure that they know that they're valued so that they do come to you for the big things.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Anyone have an example of that? Listen and observe more than we talk. Anybody good at that? Yeah?
My grandmother used to say that God gave you one mouth and 2 ears for a reason.
Yeah.
And you should listen twice as much as you talk.
Yeah, and it's hard, isn't it? And especially when you're hearing something, I'll never forget, my daughter, and if she's watching this, hi, would say to me, she had this friend that was having her come over, wanted her to come over and spend the night. And this is a friend, a woman, a young girl in her class that she had told me like every day that week something that she had done negative to somebody else. And I said, oh, okay. I thought you were struggling with her decisions about how she was treating some people. And she said, yeah, but I think I kind of want to be the mean girl. And I was sharing this story earlier with a coworker, and she went, oh, and I said, I did not do that. I stayed steady. And I just said, yeah, that it is hard. Sometimes it seems really interesting to do things that we're not used to. And I just stopped with that. And, I said, well, I think you'll figure it out. And that was really hard, but I really needed to let her have this situation. And so then the next day or two, she came up to me and I said, so are you going over to her house to spend the night? She's like, no, I decided not to. I didn't celebrate. I didn't give her stuff. I didn't talk about all the reasons that she shouldn't. I just said, oh, okay. And I let it go from that, because we need to trust them to make these decisions. And even if she chose to go, which I would have let her go, the staff member's like, you wouldn't have let her go? I'm like, yeah, I would, because she learns through that process, And then I hope that she trusts me enough, we've built enough that if something happened, we would talk through it, But I know that she has the ability to handle this. And, I really worked hard to try to live that. And it wasn't something I could do the first time. I was like my coworker going, years before that. But as I really practiced it, it got easier. And same with anticipate the problems, So if she decided she was going to go, we might talk through, So what are some things that might be hard for you if you win? And, if you have those open conversations and you let your child be real and not just tell you what they want you to, what they think you want to hear, right? Like our children get used to that. They just learn how to just say the stuff that we want to hear. And so if we don't do, and we just sit with them, whatever they're feeling, it's really important. And finding that teachable moment and keeping their dignity intact, so if, like Sarah was talking about, Liam's taking the recycling out and he fills it up way over and it keeps falling over, and then he's getting really frustrated, instead of saying, well, you filled it too far. Don't you see? Don't you remember? We talked about this yesterday. Those words that come out of our mouths from wherever we heard it before, and instead say, I wonder if there's a tipping point to this container. I wonder if you go too far, if that's the reason. That's interesting. Maybe next time we can look to see, if there was one time that it doesn't fall over because you didn't get to that tipping point. So we keep their dignity intact. Reminding them without nagging. I think that's a common complaint for young children and teens, that we just keep saying the same thing over and over again. We think we're being efficient, right? And we feel like we're the ones that are, we can keep them on board. We can get this done quicker. We can get all this done so we can go do something fun. Well, now we're acting like the thing they're doing shouldn't be fun. And instead, we just can sit with that situation. So we're not trying to get something finished. That becomes part of it. I think, again, of the nursery where Renee and Sarah both work, and, the cleaning up of the meal is part of the process. It's not the thing they're trying to get over real quick. It is part of the process. And the children all have a role with that. To see these 1-year-olds take a washcloth and wipe their mouth and face and then go over and put it into where the dirty washcloths are, and then take their plate and rinse it off, or whatever step they're in right now. It isn't to get done quickly. It's what they do. And the same with that adolescent, when they're learning to drive, we don't want to say, okay, let's get to this next road so we can learn how to park, it's all part of the process. Let's stay with them with that. Ask questions without intimidating or judging. So we kind of shared that as well. Allow problem solving and natural consequences. It is okay for them to fail. It's okay for them to make a mistake that, they're not going to like. When I taught my daughter to cut with scissors, or she learned really to cut with scissors, she cut this whole side of her hair, and I didn't take all the scissors out of the house. Yeah, you're going to have that side of your hair shorter for a while. And so what do you want to do about it? Well, I don't like this, so we'll have to get it all cut. Well, then I'll be a boy, and I was like, well, you won't be a boy, but you will have short hair and it will grow. And so part of it was she wanted to get rid of her bangs, and she thought by cutting them, And so those are all just things that we learn from. I didn't have a reason to reprimand her or to take away all of her toys or not let her, it was its own natural consequence. That's all that needed to happen. And sometimes I think we feel pressure to do more because this thing happened, when we really could just sit with that. Do you want to take?
Oh, I was picturing during Child's Work Night one year, or maybe last year, we had a 2-year-old, or maybe he had just turned 3, and he had done hand washing, and he had filled up that pitcher as high as it would go, and had poured it into his bowl. And when it was all done, and he's carrying this huge bowl over to the sink, and all the parents, I can see all of their faces as they're lining the room. They're they're all just trying to They just want to help him. And he's spilling along the way. And of course, then he gets it to the sink, it goes in, and of course, all over the floor as well. But then he goes and gets a towel. And so he knows, he's like, that was a little too high.
Yeah.
So it's his natural, right, consequence. Like he knows, oh, that was probably, next time I'll do less.
Yeah, it's fair.
I struggle with long-term consequences, like skin cancer, or cavities, or malnutrition, things that aren't as immediate. And that's where I'm like, you know what, no, you have to put on the sunscreen, and you have to brush your teeth. And that's where I find myself nagging the most, is with the things where I'm not willing to compromise, but it still all comes out like to the same, sounds the same to them. So I don't know if you have any pointers there with the older ones.
I feel like those are non-negotiables, right? Like those are my non-negotiables. Like we don't go to the pool unless you put on sunscreen. So if you don't want to put on sunscreen, we don't have to go to the pool. And that's just, we don't have a pool at home, so she has to go to a friend's house. And so, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that planning piece. Like I had this parent I was supporting, and she's like, I cannot stand that all the beds aren't made. My children all have to make their beds, and it drives me crazy. And so I'm like, well, you have to figure out, like, are you, so what are their non-negotiables, and what if their non-negotiables are not making the bed? Like where's your hill you're going to die on, kind of thing. And so we have to figure out, like, safety pieces, I agree, non-negotiable, but sometimes we have to figure out where do those pieces lie. And so am I making everything that? Because sometimes we do. Sometimes those other things get bigger. So if we sit down and have this conversation and we talk about, okay, how are we doing? And if you do it once a quarter, once a year, once a month, whatever works for your family, and everyone has a time to speak and talk about that, and it doesn't feel like you've got 19 things and they only have one, then it starts to feel like it's more reasonable now. And in a sense, you're telling them the why, so here's what I've learned. And so if you find something that's different than that, I want to hear it, and so we can talk about it. Well, I think that sunscreen gives you cancer. Okay, show me that, and let's talk about it. I want to understand that too. I mean, I gained 10 pounds in college because oat bran was supposed to be so good for you. And then they were like, we learned it was just full of fat, right? So, there's things that we learn through science that are different, and tell them, be a scientist. I want to know if that's not the case, but everything I've researched tells me differently than that. I tell families to do that with technology. I'm like, so have them research, like actual researched, information about how technology doesn't change their brain or make them frustrated or angry. Show me that, and then we can have that conversation, and so then it kind of puts it back on them. Yeah.
What age do you start having that kind of back and forth? Then you talked about, like, on one of the earlier slides, like, set up the rules with them. But, like, at what point, because if I mean, and maybe it's just never done it, but if I went to my 4-year-old and was like, well, what do you think the rules would be,
So instead of starting with, Right. Yeah. So, you would start with what's developmental for them. And so through your observation, you might find that they're struggling with, when you tell them they have to eat dinner at the table, when we eat as a family. And so that's their fight every day. And, I'm realizing that that's the thing that makes you upset every day. And I think we need to have a family meeting about it. And so we're all going to sit down tonight after dinner and talk about what things are that are important to you, and then mama have a turn, and so forth. And so then you just give them a chance, and it might go on to something else that we weren't really talking about, and then you just can kind of redirect them back, and you keep it really short, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and okay, so let's write that down on our board. These are the things we've decided so far, and then maybe next month we'll have another meeting. So it's November, and then when we get to December, and so you would make it like developmentally for them. And so you're not going to do a lot of things, just maybe 1 or 2 things. That's what I would probably do. Do you want to add to that? Yeah.
I think that covered.
Know your child well and without comparing them to others. Whew, my twin grandchildren. Well, I'm learning this all over again because my mind constantly wants to compare them, or to say, gosh, she's so much more flexible, or he's so much more flexible, or whatever that situation is. And instead just seeing them as their own person. I was meeting with a family recently, and they were like, but my other child was reading at this age, And I said, okay, so own that feeling, and now let it go, because this is your child now. And so now let's think about what this child's doing and where they've been and how they're progressing or not, and then we can figure out that next part of that, because we are all very different humans, and so it's appropriate for you to think about and to ask that question. But now let's look individually at that child. Learn how to nurture the aha moment, and that just takes it takes time. Kyla Wolf, who is in Amethyst, wrote this great blog in the Inform Montessori blog about this topic. I encourage you to look at it, and it really just talked about how with her own children and as a teacher, allowing children to discover things instead of us saying, okay, if you do this and do this, now look what happens, this happened, now we just took it from them. And so if we learn how to give them just the right pieces of that so that they can have that aha moment, then it's just super powerful. And so giving lots of opportunities for them to do that. Did you have some thought about it?
No.
Okay.
I see that all the time.
Yeah. Never talk ill of your child in or out of their presence. Tough one. And, I one of the things, and I'm not really proud of this, but I used to say to my child when she was throwing temper tantrums we'll just use that word for now, if somebody hears this and thinks you're hurt, they may call the police and they may come to our door. And she would get more angry. She would be quieter, but she'd get more angry, And so I was, really trying to not say in front of my mother or from, well, we're late because she threw a fit or whatever. Really just trying to be, just talk to her like I would about my spouse or anybody else, right? So really making sure that we don't say to them, well, you did this, and so now, you're not good at this, and I can't do that. And just holding those. You can have a private conversation with your spouse or partner later, but in front of your child, we'll really try to be supportive of where they are. You want to do this?
The prize and punishments are incentives toward unnatural or forced effort, and therefore we certainly cannot speak of the natural development of the child in connection with them. So it's kind of like what we were talking about with the money for chores. We want them to develop that intrinsic motivation. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Gosh, I look at all of these different pieces, and we've talked about several of them. Does anyone have any of those that kind of stand out to you, that you're curious about the context of, or have had an example that maybe would be helpful for someone else to hear? Glenn?
I think the last one, apologies, are acceptable. I don't think we as adults want to do that, say that enough to our kids. And if you are trying to help them understand how to be a human, it's good to know that we're not perfect either. So I think it's valuable that you show that side sometimes, even when you're not in your best moment, just like they are.
Yeah, so that part of modeling apologies is really important, and we should take that chance. Sarah?
I was going to say that I think the being calm component is like one of the most important ones that we see, at least with the younger kiddos, because if they're having a very hard time and then you show them that makes you have a very hard time, it doesn't really help them feel secure and confident in your role as the person who's going to be in charge and take care of it. So if you're like, oh, you're freaking out, just stop freaking out like this, you're driving me crazy and all this stuff, it's not gonna get to the end place. Just, I see that you're having a really hard time. I'll wait until you're ready.
Yeah.
Just does not need to be any emotion in it at all. You're having a hard time, I'm not. Separate.
And then you can go in the bathroom and go,
Yeah.
right? But we're showing them that calm and confidence can really be effective for their behavior too.
Yeah. And it really does work. It's amazing. I would just give it a try at the very least. Like, just see what happens. If you're like, okay, I'm gonna wait for you, and then when we're both ready, we'll talk.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
anyone have any tactics to I feel like I'm absorbing my child's emotions all the time. Like it's a lot all day. And I just sometimes physically can't handle it. Do you have any advice or?
Do you want to start?
Sometimes I took a time out as a parent.
Yeah.
Like I told them I needed to just take some time for me. And I would say, you can play with these toys and mommy's going to be over here. I just need to relax myself.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to being honest and I think recognizing that for yourself is step one, because not all of us recognize that. Like I think for some people, they do take on the emotions of other people in the room more so than others. And others of us, that doesn't really affect me, and I don't know if it's just because I've practiced it or we're just, different. And so recognizing that, number one, first thing to do. And then, I agree with, taking the time to yourself, and then, almost like meditation, trying to be mindful. As soon as you start to feel yourself starting to, it's usually your shoulders are going to go up first, is see your body, and whatever those cues are for you, trying to find some kind of mindful activity that can help you with that, whether that is coloring, and that might make you more stressed, or you might find that doing some kind of movements. Can I hand this to you a second? One of our coworkers, Jacob, can do this so quickly. I can't do that quickly, but he could just, and because that's one of the things he would use when somebody was really getting frustrated and not like to them, but just for himself, and it helped to keep him calm. So I think any kind of knitting, you have to find what the thing is that works for you, but I think any of those mindful activities can be really helpful.
I have a mantra that I use.
Great.
I do too.
Yeah.
What is yours?
I tell myself that I am a patient and gentle parent.
Okay. Yeah, I am a patient and gentle parent.
And I have to sometimes I'm like, what am I? What kind of parent am I? I can't even remember what my mantra is supposed to be, because I already got so wrapped up into the moment, because I'm very much an empath, and then it triggers my anxiety, and then I'll fight or flight. And so, patient and gentle parent, that helps. And the whole concept that if you move your body, you change your mind. So you're standing in the same space having the same conflict or issue. If you just move yourself to a different room, or all of a sudden you start dancing like a fool, and you would be surprised how all of a sudden the temper tantrum that they're having, they're like, what? Because if you move your body, you change your mind. And so absolutely. So
move your body.
And move yourself through. Hey, I'm not saying it worked. It's still new in practice, but.
So mantra and move your body, change your mind.
Move your body, change your mind.
And singing.
And singing.
Singing helps.
Yeah.
What I do sometimes on the studio, because in the 3 to 6 level, we get a lot of, I'm sure they also get this in the 9 to 12 with the hormones and all that, but in 3 to 6, you get a lot of crying kids who are crying and hyperventilating to the point where they're like, and I do.
They're happy 99% of the time.
Yes. Yes. No, they don't do it a lot. But, kids, they get very big emotions, right? And so they get very upset at each other. And so I tend to do a lot of, I can't understand you. Will you breathe with me? And so that way we can calm down so I can understand you better. And you can tell me what happened. Watch me. And then it also helps me, because I'm like, this is great. I love this.
The frontal lobe, yeah.
And so you would not believe how many kids are like, okay, he did this, and I'm like, yes, I can hear you now. Would you like to have a conversation with him about that?
Yeah, and the third bullet, the being intentional in frontal lobe, deep breaths do actually cool that frontal lobe part of your brain. And so it is really helpful. And so I think breathing is a great thing too.
And not that the kids cry all the time, but they don't.
That's interesting as another opportunity to model.
Yes.
You know? Like, yeah, you know what? It's not that mommies never get upset. It's just that I've learned how to calm myself down, and so can you.
Yes.
Right. And the time where you didn't, you say, so this is one of those times that I fell short. I said that word that I said we weren't going to use, you know. And so I'm going to keep working. I'm going to go back to my mindfulness. Sarah, did you want to add something?
I was just gonna ask like what types of emotions you're like feeling. Are you feeling sad or angry or like?
Oh, okay. It's, I really don't know what it's all about.
Yeah.
But I think
It's a lot.
something in me gets triggered.
Yeah.
Like maybe from my childhood.
Having
My
kids brings that out of you.
and-
100%. You're just gonna like
Yeah.
be like, oh, there it was.
Something that I didn't learn how to handle before, and now it's coming to the forefront, and I have to deal with it now.
I agree 100% with all the things that were said, and I also feel like something that really helped me too is that reminding myself, I don't know how old your kids are, but reminding myself of my son's age, like, because I'm like the type of parent who's, my child just like does a lot of things, like he just wants to do things and acts like a grown-up, and so when he doesn't, I'm like, you're driving me crazy, just like put the groceries away, you know what I mean? Like, he's 4 years old, he can't do that, like chill out, he doesn't want to put the groceries away, you know what I mean? So I'm like, he's 4 years old.
He's been on this earth for 4 years.
Right, like,
Yeah.
he can do this and this and this and this, and he does not have to put the groceries away. It's totally fine. He doesn't have, you know what I mean? That's like a weird one to put out there, but that's a weird example, but just reminding him of the age. Myself.
Mine is 4 too.
4, yeah, and it's just like such a big, yeah, that's a really big time because they're like so little, but they act so big. It's just, yeah, I would remind myself of his age. That's really helpful.
My oldest, this is just a funny story, but my oldest, who is now 24 and a mother herself, I remember being in Dillard's, and I probably had her out shopping all day. She was probably hungry and dehydrated, and she hit her wall, and I was like, if you want to act like a 3-year-old, I'll treat you like a 3-year-old. Ding, ding, ding. She was 3 years old. I was like, and that's why I still
That is so
remember it,
funny.
because I was so like, duh, she is 3 years old.
Wow. Yeah. Full
And,
circle.
at the time, as a 23-year-old mother, I was just like, ah. I had to laugh at myself because
Right. It's the best thing to do.
it was.
Yeah. Summarize all that, okay? So we had some really great examples about, reminding ourselves of how old our children really are and what they're capable of. They've only been on the earth for a few short years, and so that's really important stuff.
Do you want me to go
Yeah, I
ahead?
think that's good.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Just also live in the moment, right? Like we can't force those teachable moments. They're going to come up. They will come up naturally. And our children are not broken. They need not be fixed, like you said. Remind yourself of their age or even also of their personality, right? My oldest is a mini-me. My youngest is just like my husband. And so...
Your voice changed when you said that. I don't know if you recognize that or
Yes,
not.
I did. I did that on purpose. So all those things that you love, right? But that make her unique. And like they say, sometimes your children are your biggest teachers, and my youngest is mine. So I just have to remind myself that she is not me, and she beats to her own drum, and I can't change her, and I don't want to. Do you want to read the quote, or do you want me to?
Education should no longer be mostly imparting of knowledge, but must take a new path, seeking the release of human potentialities. Woo! That's your only job to do right there. Here you go. You got that. So I think, one of the things that I feel like society gives us is that our children have to do all these things, and they have to do them in front of other people, because we have to look good. And even if we don't really want to say that out loud, sometimes we feel like that. And really, that's not our role. It's to give them experiences and let them build that. I love Marie Montessori's quote, every child has within them everything they need. And I don't know that I've ever used that as a mantra, but I say it so much in my head that I feel like that's part of a way that we can lean in to this whole conversation, is just remembering that they have within them, but it may not be here at 4, and it may not be there at 14. It might be there at 12, and it goes away. And just look at them through new eyes so that we're not consistently trying to make them somebody that they're not. Our youngest, which we would always laugh when she would go to bed or go back to college, or even last weekend, that she would have 3 or 4 different glasses out that she left all through the house. And Glenn and I would look at each other and say, we will miss that someday. Like that's really the thing that I'm going to get all worked up about, So just trying to see them at their great potentials instead of the things that make us annoyed or frustrated. Anyone else have anything about any of that, a thought that you wanted to share? Yeah, so I have a lot of books up in my space, and they're all free for people to check out, and they have little pieces to them. So some of them are Montessori books. One that I really like is Conscious Parenting by Dr. Shefali Sabari. And so if you want to think through that part of how do we, and that really just means thinking about what we do instead of just doing what we're on autopilot to do. For some of us, we go right back into, we will never say what our mom said or our dad said, and then we find ourselves saying it. And so conscious parenting is just about really thinking about why I do what I do with my children and with our family, and doing it, being intentional about it instead of autopilot. And when a child says, why do I have to clean my room? And I remember, I don't know if you remember, but having that conversation with our oldest. And I said, I don't know why you have to clean your room. I don't have a good reason for you. And I guess it is your room. And so, I think what we have to agree upon is if we're having people over, that's when you need to clean your room. So when people come over, it's appropriate for them. And so other than that, it's your room, and so you can use it the way you want to use it. And so once I let go of that, it was pretty freeing because I just got so caught up. And she did her own laundry, and it wasn't perfect. And oftentimes she was down there putting stuff back in the dryer because it got all rumpled up, but it worked out for her, and I had to let go of that other piece. So I think sometimes we put on a way of being with our children that isn't really necessary, and so being conscious about it, that's one of the books I really like. Mm-hmm. You want to share any books that you like that might be helpful?
I don't have time to read books. Barbara,
I don't believe that. You have those other resources too.
Well, I was gonna say, right? I love one of our former teachers who was in Quatrefoil, Margaret Beagle, has a new kind of project called Whole Child Collaborative, and she's been writing a few blog posts lately that I just think are wonderful, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like I put them in our notes home. Because they're just great tips, especially like this holiday season when you're going to be like going from relative's house to relative's house to do this and that. Can't think of anything else. There's a series. One's how to talk so your children will listen, and listen so your children will talk, and how to talk so your team will listen. I think those have some really great, some parents really want specifics. Conscious parent is kind of global, and for those of you that like big picture stuff, it's a good one for that. Kids Are Worth It. The Barbara Colarosa book has a lot of very specific scenarios. So if you like that kind of thing, Kids Are How to Talk with your children also gives some real specific examples. So I really like that too. And then there's, I don't have that out in my, gosh, I have to get some more copies of that. But Children Who Are Not Yet Peaceful is a really good book. It's more geared towards school, but you can use a lot of those examples at home with your children. So one of the examples that we share a lot as a staff here is when your child is struggling and sometimes they feel all alone, and they're throwing this fit, and we kind of put them all alone because we're like, well, no one's going to want to be around you. Even if we don't say that, we're giving them that. And so the author of this book talks about drawing a circle and including them, so, in a sense that if we know that they really get frustrated because they have certain things they want to watch on TV and they don't get to watch it or whatever. And so we draw a circle and include them into something else. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to go do this.
this? And, do you think you could show us again how we play that game with that other ball that you have? And so we try to include them in on that instead of making them feel more and more isolated. Because I think that becomes a natural part of parenting. We start to be with a kiddo that's easier and whatever that looks like for a given moment, and really being conscious about what am I doing when I do that, and how do I make sure that I can be inclusive of them as well.
So
Yeah.
we were just talking about the Janet Lansbury podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Really quick, okay, good. But yeah.
Does everyone know that podcast? So Janet Lansbury, so she is mostly with infants and toddlers. Does she have some with older children?
She actually does. That's what we were just saying. We were like, should we say it or not? But she does have things that work with situations that could happen with 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of. It is mostly infant and toddler, but she has some. Right? Has some good things for older kids.
I was looking at that one book that she has. It's The Discipline with the Toddler. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, have you read it? Yeah. Was it helpful? Okay. I was like, maybe you didn't like it. Don't read that one. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. And there's a book called The Explosive Child. I really like Dr. Sabari's book, Out of Control. And parents would be like, that's the one I need. And I'm like, she's really talking about us, the adults. They're like, what? I'm like, well, she's bringing up that sometimes that, we contribute to that, And so, we have to think about why that's happening and how we can change our behaviors too, in that same way. Any other resources anyone wants to share? Any questions or comments that would be helpful? Was this helpful tonight for you?
Yeah, and it actually, so I have a 24, an 18, and now the 5.5-year-old.
Wow.
And so I'm watching the 24-year-old and the 18-year-old at their phases in life, struggling, and hearing that everything that they need to have inside of them. So that's really helpful to they'll get there. They're just not ready to be there yet. But when I'm having issues with the 5.5-year-old, I doubt my ability because I feel in some ways. So when I said I needed to be here tonight because I've really been struggling, I meant it because I'm watching the other two and then going, well, I didn't do so great the first 2 times. How am I possibly going to deal with this one? And she is her own unique person, but I can also see some similarities, and I'm like, what? How did I deal with that before? And maybe it wasn't right.
So maybe too much conscious parenting is not a good thing. Maybe you need to be more unconscious about what. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
but there is something to say about that. Yeah,
quit analyzing it too hard, and yet just
give yourself some grace. You were a different person then.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely, for sure.
And so maybe what you'll walk away with tonight is this feeling of confidence, that, I am capable, and maybe that's your new mantra, right? I am capable. And oftentimes if we just do the small steps with great confidence, then the rest of it starts to come. If we take those first 2 steps and believe that this will then change, and maybe not change them, but change the situation, right? So we control that part. We oftentimes control the weather with our child or with our children. And so just being present and knowing that, I'm capable of this. I got it. I can do this. And they're worth it, It gives you some grace to continue. Yeah.
Something that I remind myself a lot of, because there was a lot of things that I'm doing with my now 2-year-old daughter that I could not do with my almost 9-year-old daughter. And I really wish I would have. Is that you do the best you can with the information you have at the time. And when you learn something new that's new, you do what you can with the information you have. And as you learn new, you make those changes.
Well, and realistically, just
do the best you can with what you know.
You can't learn and grow without struggling.
Then change when you know better.
Through your first initial steps. So if I failed the first 2, no, I'm just kidding.
Mine actually comes up with, like, I have 16, 12, 8, and 2, or 3. And sometimes the oldest will say, well, you didn't do that. You didn't tell me that.
When the oldest says that
I can't.
you didn't do that with me.
We're still all learning.
We're still all learning. Yeah. It's a good point. Grace.
For you with older ones, I don't have to tell you that, there's that little one toddling around and then you blink and they're asking you for the car keys. Like, even in moments when you feel like it's so overwhelming, in a week, it'll be gone in a month, and then the next thing, they grow up, you grow up here, your grandparents, they grow up so fast, and then you have kids go, oh my God, they were right this time. I mean, I still can't believe that my daughter's driving. I can't believe that, my son's, it seems like it just all happens so fast. And I think back on things that I obsessed about when they were younger, that was like, and then it all went back.
It didn't even matter.
Try to not get so mired down because, the river was running fast, so you can't walk.
Things change really quick.
Right past you before you know it, and you'll be, like you said, looking back like, oh, remember when there were glasses all over the house?
Yeah.
Those things that used to drive you crazy that now you're kind of like, oh, I mean, the mom and I were just talking the other day in the car. She's like, well, Maggie gets her license. You're not going to have to drive them all over the place anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to drive around anymore. Those things that might even be making you super crazy right now might be the things that you miss a lot when they get a little older.
Miss the whining.
You probably won't remember it either.
Exactly.
You're like,
Why like this?
Yeah.
But again, I shouldn't compare.
It's communicating.
Yeah.
It's a form of communication. Yeah, we left our 18-month-old twins this weekend, and our Jude put his hands up and says, which he's learning to say words, and he said, up? And I just said, how much longer is this going to last? Will it still be there? And, I know it's hard. There's 2 of them, and they can't pick up both of them at the same time or carry them, and it just lasts so little. And you had said that before, especially when kids are really little, give it 2 weeks, right? And something new will take its place. And, and just believing that and having faith in that, really important. What great words do you want to leave us with, Amy?
I think those were great words.
Do we have one more slide?
Oh,
is it just the picture?
Just the picture.
Yeah. It's an ongoing process. We're never there.
Still learning.
Still learning. Always learning. Thank you each for coming tonight. This will be on the blog, the PowerPoint will as well, so it should be up in a couple of days. But we'll be sticking around for a minute and having something we'll chat about. Thank you for contributing. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, it's Evan from the Curve Desk. Thank you so much for checking out our recorded version of the PIP workshop last night. Here are the books that Barbara spoke about last night at our workshop. If you'd like to check out these books, like The Conscious Parent or How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, you can go check them out from Barbara's office starting today. Thank you so much.